In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. Albert Camus. These words, they whisper of something profound, something most people sense but cannot name. Look around you. Day follows night. Joy follows sorrow. Success follows failure. The pendulum of existence swings endlessly between opposing forces. But here's what they don't tell you. This isn't chaos. This isn't random. This is a hidden law, ancient, precise, and operating in every moment of your life. The mystics called it the Law of Polarity, and once you understand it, once you truly grasp its power, you will never see your reality the same way again. Right now, as you listen to these words, you exist at some point between the extremes, between light and shadow, between hope and despair, between the person you are and the person you could become. Most people live their entire lives unaware that they can choose where they stand on this spectrum. They believe they are victims of circumstance, tossed about by forces beyond their control. They swing from one extreme to another, from elation to depression, from confidence to fear, never understanding that the pendulum itself is under their command. But you are about to learn something different, something that will shatter the illusion that you are powerless, something that will reveal the hidden mechanism behind every emotion you feel, every experience you have, every reality you create. This is the Law of Polarity, and it controls everything. Imagine for a moment that reality itself is like a vast piano keyboard. On one end, the highest notes, pure joy, love, success, light. On the other end, the lowest notes, despair, hatred, failure, darkness. Between them stretches an infinite spectrum of possibilities. Most people believe these are separate things, that joy and sorrow are enemies, that light and darkness are at war, that success and failure cannot coexist. They are wrong. The ancients understood what modern minds have forgotten. Everything has its pair of opposites. But these opposites are not enemies. They are two aspects of the same fundamental reality. Two ends of the same spectrum. Two notes played on the same cosmic instrument. Heat and cold, both are simply variations of temperature. Love and hate, both are expressions of the same passionate energy. Success and failure, both are positions on the spectrum of achievement. This is the Law of Polarity, as revealed in the ancient Hermetic texts, particularly the Kybalion. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Read those words again. Let them sink into your consciousness. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. What this means, what this truly means, is revolutionary. If you are experiencing the negative pole of any spectrum, you have the inherent power to shift to the positive pole. Why? Because they are the same energy, simply expressed at different degrees. You cannot have one without the potential for the other. The person experiencing the deepest despair carries within them the seed of the greatest joy. The one who has known the darkest failure possesses the blueprint for the most radiant success. This is not philosophy. This is physics. This is the fundamental architecture of reality itself. When you understand this, when you truly understand this, you realize that you are never truly stuck. You are never truly powerless. You are simply at a different degree on the spectrum, and degrees can be changed. But why should you care about this ancient law? Why does this matter to you, right here, right now, in your daily life? Because every single day, you are unconsciously demonstrating the law of polarity. And because you don't understand it, you suffer unnecessarily. Think about your moods. One day, you wake up energized, optimistic, ready to conquer the world. The next day, you feel sluggish, pessimistic, defeated before you even begin. You tell yourself these are random occurrences. Bad sleep, maybe. Stress, circumstances. No. You are witnessing polarity in action. Think about your relationships. One moment, you feel deep love and connection with someone. The next, irritation and distance. You blame them, you blame yourself. You wonder why relationships are so complicated. No, you are witnessing polarity in action. Think about your career, your dreams, your sense of purpose. Some days you feel aligned, passionate, clear about your path. Other days you feel lost, confused, questioning every decision you've ever made. No, you are witnessing polarity in action. The reason you feel stuck in cycles, the reason you swing between highs and lows, is not because life is inherently chaotic. It's because you don't understand the mechanism. You don't realize that every negative experience is simply you being positioned at one end of a spectrum, and that you can consciously move to the other end. Most people wait for external circumstances to change their internal state. They wait for the promotion to feel successful. They wait for the relationship to feel loved. They wait for the perfect conditions to feel happy. But the masters of polarity, the ones who truly understand this law, they work from the inside out. They recognize their current pole, and they consciously shift to where they want to be. This is why some people seem to navigate life with an almost supernatural resilience. It's not because they don't experience darkness. It's because they understand that darkness is simply the absence of light, and they know how to flip the switch. When you master polarity, you stop being a victim of your emotions. You stop being tossed around by circumstances. You become the conductor of your own experience, consciously choosing which notes to play on the keyboard of your reality. To truly understand polarity, we must journey deeper. We must explore not just how it works, but why it exists at all. From a spiritual perspective, polarity is not an accident. It is part of the divine design. The universe itself operates on this principle because contrast is necessary for growth, for choice, for the very experience of consciousness. Think about it. How would you know joy without sorrow? How would you recognize strength without having experienced weakness? How would you value light without having sat in darkness? The ancient mystics understood this. They saw polarity not as a curse, but as a gift. Every challenge was an opportunity to know its opposite more deeply. Every valley prepared them to appreciate the mountain. Every winter made spring more precious. This is why spiritual traditions speak of the dark night of the soul. It's not punishment, it's preparation. It's the universe positioning you at one pole so that you can experience the full glory of the other. But polarity isn't just mystical philosophy. Modern science confirms what the ancients knew intuitively. Consider electromagnetism, one of the fundamental forces of the universe. It operates entirely on polarity, positive and negative charges, north and south poles, electrical currents flowing from one pole to another. Without polarity, there would be no electromagnetic field, no energy, no life as we know it. Consider quantum physics with its wave-particle duality. Light behaves as both a wave and a particle, depending on how you observe it. Two seemingly opposite characteristics existing within the same phenomenon. Consider psychology with its understanding of cognitive reframing. The same event can be interpreted as devastating or empowering, depending on your mental framework. Same event, opposite meanings, both equally valid from their respective poles. Even neuroscience reveals polarity at work. Your brain operates through electrical impulses, positive and negative charges creating the very thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, the reality you perceive. What the ancient mystics called the Law of Polarity, modern science calls by different names: duality, complementarity, dialectical processes. The language changes, but the fundamental truth remains. Reality is constructed from pairs of opposites working together. And here's the most profound insight. If polarity is woven into the very fabric of existence, from the quantum level to the cosmic level, then learning to work with it isn't just helpful, it's essential. You are not separate from these universal laws, you are an expression of them. And that means you have access to the same power that lights the stars and spins the galaxies. The power to consciously shift your position on the spectrum of experience. Now we move from understanding to application, from theory to practice. Because knowledge without action is merely entertainment, and you came here for transformation. There are 4 fundamental practices that will allow you to master polarity in your daily life. 4 pillars, upon which you can build your new relationship with reality. Pillar 1. Awareness and naming. The first step is developing the ability to recognize and name your current position on any spectrum. Most people are unconsciously polarized. They feel angry or sad or anxious, but they don't pause to identify exactly where they are on the emotional spectrum. Starting today, several times throughout your day, ask yourself, what pole am I occupying right now? Are you at the pole of confidence or insecurity, gratitude or resentment, energy or lethargy, hope or despair? Be specific. Don't just say, I feel bad. Say, I am currently positioned at the pole of frustration on the spectrum of patience. Or, I am at the pole of scarcity on the spectrum of abundance. This isn't just vocabulary. This is recognition of your power. Because once you identify your current pole, you automatically become aware that an opposite pole exists. And awareness is the first step toward choice. Practice this awareness exercise for 1 week without trying to change anything. Simply observe, simply name, simply recognize where you are on the various spectrums of your experience. Pillar 2. Conscious shifting. Once you can identify your current pole, you can begin to shift consciously to the opposite pole. Remember, these aren't separate things. They are degrees on the same spectrum, and degrees can be changed. Here's how. When you find yourself at a negative pole, don't fight it. Don't resist it. Don't judge it. Simply acknowledge it and then ask, what is the opposite pole? What would that feel like? How would I think if I were positioned there? If you're at the pole of anxiety, the opposite pole is peace. Close your eyes. Imagine what peace feels like in your body. How would you breathe if you were peaceful? How would you hold your shoulders? What thoughts would move through your mind? If you're at the pole of resentment, the opposite pole is gratitude. What would you be grateful for if you were positioned there? What would you notice that you're currently overlooking? If you're at the pole of scarcity, the opposite pole is abundance. What abundance already exists in your life? What resources do you already possess? Start with small shifts. Spend 5 minutes consciously positioning yourself at the opposite pole. Feel it in your body. Think the thoughts that match that pole. Breathe the breath of that pole. With practice, these shifts become easier, faster, more natural. You begin to realize that you have far more control over your internal state than you ever imagined. Pillar 3. Guarding the mind. This is perhaps the most crucial skill, learning to catch negative spirals before they deepen. Most people unconsciously amplify whatever pole they're occupying. If they're angry, they find more things to be angry about. If they're sad, they replay memories that make them sadder. This is unconscious polarization, and it creates unnecessary suffering. Instead, become a guardian of your own mind. When you notice yourself being drawn deeper into a negative pole, stop. Pause. Ask, is continuing down this path serving me? Am I choosing to amplify this pole, or am I being unconscious? Often, the simple act of pausing is enough to break the momentum. You realize you have a choice. You can continue spiraling deeper into the negative pole, or you can step back and consciously shift toward the positive. This doesn't mean suppressing negative emotions. This means being conscious about how long you occupy them and how deeply you let them define your experience. Pillar 4. Daily polarity check. Finally, establish a daily ritual. Every morning before you begin your day, ask yourself, what pole do I want to occupy today? What spectrum do I want to explore? Every evening before you sleep, ask yourself, what pole did I occupy most today? What did I learn about my relationship with polarity? This practice creates consciousness around your emotional and mental habits. You begin to see patterns. You begin to recognize which external circumstances tend to push you toward which poles. You begin to develop mastery. Remember, the goal isn't to always occupy the positive pole. That's neither possible nor desirable. The goal is to be conscious about where you are and to have the ability to shift when you choose to. You are learning to dance with polarity rather than being danced by it. I can hear some of you thinking, this sounds like pseudoscience. This sounds like wishful thinking. Where's the proof? Let me address this directly, because skepticism is valuable. It keeps us grounded. It prevents us from accepting ideas simply because they sound appealing. But here's what I want you to consider. What modern science dismisses as pseudoscience, the ancients understood as metaphysics. They were exploring the same fundamental questions we explore today, but with different tools and different language. When ancient mystics spoke of polarity, they were observing the same phenomena that modern physicists call wave-particle duality, electromagnetic fields, and quantum superposition. When they talked about consciousness affecting reality, they were anticipating what we now call the observer effect in quantum mechanics. The language was different, the methods were different, but the core insights, remarkably consistent. Consider this. Every electronic device you own operates on the principle of polarity. Your computer, your phone, your car, all of them function because engineers understand how to harness the power of positive and negative charges. They've taken the abstract principle of polarity and made it practical, tangible, measurable. What if consciousness works the same way? What if emotions, thoughts, and experiences operate according to the same fundamental principles that govern electricity and magnetism? You don't have to believe it. You don't have to accept it on faith. You can test it. You can experiment with the practices I've shared. You can observe whether consciously working with polarity produces tangible changes in your experience. Science, at its heart, is about experimentation and observation. So experiment, observe. Treat your own consciousness as a laboratory. Apply these principles for 30 days and see what happens. If it works, regardless of whether current scientific paradigms can fully explain why. If it doesn't work, discard it and move on. But don't dismiss it simply because it doesn't fit into current categories of understanding. Remember, every major scientific breakthrough was once considered impossible, heretical, or pseudoscientific by the established authorities of its time. The ancients left us a map. We don't have to believe in the map to use it. We can simply follow it and see where it leads. Let me share with you some examples that will make this principle vivid and real. The rhythm of nature. Look at the natural world, day and night, summer and winter, growth and dormancy, inhaling and exhaling, the tide coming in and going out. Nature doesn't resist polarity. It dances with it. A tree doesn't fight winter. It uses winter as a time of rest and preparation. It allows itself to be at the pole of dormancy, knowing that spring will bring it to the pole of flourishing. Animals understand this instinctively. Bears hibernate, birds migrate, flowers close at night and open in the morning. They work with the rhythm of polarity rather than against it. But humans? We often fight the natural rhythm. We want it to always be summer in our lives. We want constant growth, constant happiness, constant success. And when winter comes, as it inevitably does, we think something is wrong. The masters of polarity understand that winter is not the enemy of summer. It's the other half of the cycle that makes summer possible. The Phoenix Principle. In mythology, the phoenix is a magnificent bird that lives for hundreds of years before building a nest and setting itself on fire. From the ashes of complete destruction, a new phoenix rises, more beautiful and powerful than before. This is polarity at its most dramatic. Death and rebirth, ending and beginning, destruction and creation. But this isn't just mythology. This is a pattern you can observe throughout life. Every ending contains the seed of a new beginning. Every breakdown precedes a breakthrough. Every crisis carries within it the potential for transformation. Think about the most difficult periods of your own life, the times when everything seemed to fall apart, the relationships that ended, the dreams that shattered, the plans that failed. Now look at what came after. What new opportunities opened up? What strengths did you discover you possessed? What wisdom did you gain? What better path became available? This is the Phoenix Principle in action. The pole of destruction creating space for the pole of creation. There's an ancient parable about a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to express their sympathy. "Such bad luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbors came to congratulate him. "Such good luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, his son tried to tame one of the wild horses and broke his leg. The neighbors came to express sympathy. "Such bad luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, military officers came to draft young men for war, but they rejected the farmer's son because of his broken leg. The neighbors came to congratulate him. "Such good luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." This story illustrates a profound truth about polarity. What appears to be one pole often contains the seeds of the other. Good luck and bad luck are not fixed categories. They are perspectives, positions on a spectrum of interpretation. The farmer understood something his neighbors did not. Every situation contains both poles. Every ending is a beginning. Every loss is an opportunity. Every problem is a solution in disguise. Let me share a more modern example. Consider someone who loses their job unexpectedly. Initially, they're at the pole of loss, fear, uncertainty. This feels like a catastrophe. But if they understand polarity, they can ask, what is the opposite pole here? What might this loss make possible? Perhaps they discover entrepreneurial skills they never knew they had. Perhaps they find a career path more aligned with their true passion. Perhaps they develop resilience and self-reliance they never needed before. Perhaps they create stronger relationships with family and friends who support them through the transition. The job loss didn't change, but their relationship to it, their position on the spectrum of interpretation, shifted completely. This is not positive thinking. This is not denial. This is recognition that every situation exists on a spectrum, and you can choose which end of that spectrum to occupy. Now we arrive at the heart of everything. The moment when intellectual understanding becomes personal revelation. When ancient wisdom becomes your lived reality. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You never were. You never will be. Every emotion you feel, every situation you face, every challenge you encounter, all of them exist on spectrums of polarity. And spectrums can be navigated. Degrees can be changed. Positions can be shifted. This means that you have far more power than you ever imagined. Not the power to control external events. That's an illusion that leads to frustration. But the power to consciously choose your position on the spectrum of response to those events. Someone treats you poorly. You can choose to occupy the pole of resentment, or you can choose to occupy the pole of compassion, both for them and for yourself. A project fails. You can choose to occupy the pole of defeat, or you can choose to occupy the pole of learning and growth. Your health challenges you? You can choose to occupy the pole of victimhood, or you can choose to occupy the pole of courage and adaptation. You lose someone you love? You can choose to occupy the pole of bitter grief, or you can choose to occupy the pole of grateful remembrance. Notice, I'm not saying you won't feel the initial emotion. I'm not saying you should suppress or deny your natural responses. Feel them, honor them, let them move through you. But don't let them define your permanent position on the spectrum. Don't mistake a temporary pole for your permanent address. This is the hidden knowledge that most people never learn. You are not your circumstances. You are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes them all. And that consciousness has the power to choose where it positions itself on any spectrum of experience. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of transcendence. Not escape from the human experience, but mastery of your relationship to it. Not elimination of polarity, but conscious dance with it. When you understand this, when you truly understand this, you become free. Not free from the challenges of life, but free in your response to them. Not free from polarity, but free to work with it consciously rather than being unconsciously controlled by it. This is the difference between the masters and the masses. The masses are unconsciously polarized, tossed around by forces they don't understand. The masters recognize the forces and learn to dance with them. Which will you choose to be? We return now to where we began, the pendulum, the eternal swing between opposites that defines the rhythm of existence. But now you understand something you didn't understand before. The pendulum will always swing. That is its nature. That is the nature of life itself. You cannot stop the swing, and you don't need to. What you can do, what you must do if you want to master your reality, is choose which side you stand on. You can stand on the side of consciousness or unconsciousness, victim or creator, reaction or response, fear or love, scarcity or abundance, resentment or gratitude. The swing will continue, the poles will always exist. But where you position yourself in relationship to them, that is your choice. That is your power. That is your freedom. Remember this. The same force that creates the darkest despair also creates the brightest joy. The same energy that generates the deepest fear also generates the greatest love. The same power that produces the most devastating failure also produces the most spectacular success. It's all the same power, the same energy, the same force, simply expressed at different degrees on the spectrum of polarity. And you have been given the extraordinary gift of consciousness, the ability to recognize where you are on any spectrum and to consciously shift your position. This is not a small thing. This is perhaps the greatest power in the universe. Most people live entire lifetimes without discovering this power. They remain unconscious, reactive, at the mercy of whatever pole happens to capture them in any given moment. But you are different. You now know the secret. You now understand the hidden law that controls your reality. Use it wisely. Use it consciously. Use it with compassion for yourself and others who are still learning to navigate their own polarities. The pendulum swings eternal, light and shadow, joy and sorrow, success and failure, life and death. But you are not the pendulum. You are not the swing. You are the awareness that observes it all and chooses where to stand. You cannot stop the swing, but you can choose which side you stand on. And that choice, that single, profound, moment-by-moment choice, is how you master the hidden law that controls your reality. This is your power. This is your freedom. This is your gift. Use it well.